The great chamber of the Galactic Council had never been so quiet. For 300 years, this room had witnessed arguments, treaties, and the rise and fall of civilizations. Today, it witnessed something no one had expected. Silence. Ambassador Daniel. Hayes walked through the massive doors with steady steps. His footsteps echoed against the polished stone floor as 47 alien species watched him approach the central platform. Some of these beings had multiple eyes. Others had no eyes at all. A few existed as clouds of sentient gas contained in special suits. All of them had one thing in common. They had voted against humanity 3 months ago. Daniel did not look angry. He did not look sad. His face showed nothing at all. Somehow, that was worse than any expression could have been. High Counselor Vethary leaned forward in her elevated seat. She was an insectoid creature, nearly 8 feet tall, with a shell that glittered like black diamonds. Her species had ruled this council for 2,000 years. She had never seen a human behave this way. "Ambassador Hayes," she said, her mandibles clicking as she spoke, "you requested this audience. The council is prepared to hear your statement regarding the Resource Allocation Act." Daniel reached the speaking platform. He stood there for a long moment, looking at the assembled representatives. Some of them shifted uncomfortably under his gaze. Others pretended to study their data screens. Then he reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small crystal, no larger than his thumb. He placed it gently on the platform. The sound it made when it touched the surface seemed impossibly loud in the silence. Without a single word, Daniel turned and walked back toward the doors. "Ambassador Hayes," Vethary's voice was sharp, "you have not made your statement. You cannot simply leave."
Ow.
Daniel did not slow down. He did not look back. The doors opened before him, and he walked through them. They closed behind him with a soft hiss, and he was gone. The council chamber erupted into confused noise. Representatives shouted questions. Translators struggled to keep up with dozens of languages being spoken at once. Vethary struck her ceremonial staff against the floor, demanding order. But it took several minutes before the chaos settled. Representative Morith of the Krell Empire was the first to speak clearly. He was a large creature, resembling something between a bear and a lizard. With thick gray scales and small intelligent eyes, "Let the humans have their dramatic exit," he said dismissively. "They are young and emotional. They will return when they calm down." "Perhaps we should examine the data crystal," suggested Ambassador Tethkari. A sentinel diplomat with silver skin and large, dark eyes that seemed to hold infinite patience. A technician retrieved the crystal, connected it to the chamber's display system. The holographic projector flickered to life, showing only 2 words floating in the air above the platform. "We remember." "What does that mean?" asked Counselor Yethmar of the Velith Dominion, his tentacles writhing with confusion. Before anyone could answer, Communications Officer Lyra Venn burst through the chamber doors. The young sentinel was breathing hard, her silver skin flushed with exertion. "Hi, Counselor. Emergency report." Vethary gestured for her to speak. "All human vessels are departing Council space," Lyra reported. "Every ship, every station, every outpost. They are recalling all personnel from diplomatic missions, trade posts, and research facilities." The exodus began exactly when Ambassador Hayes left this chamber. The noise in the council chamber died instantly. "Where are they going?" Vethary demanded. "Toward the galactic rim. Beyond our sensor range. They have encrypted all communications. We cannot track them or intercept their messages." Morith snorted. "Let them run to the edge of the galaxy. They will find nothing there but empty space and dead stars. When they get hungry enough, they will come back." But Vethary was not so sure. She had studied humans for decades. She knew their history, their wars, their remarkable ability to survive against impossible odds. These were not creatures who acted without purpose. "What have we done?" she asked quietly, more to herself than to the council. The Resource Allocation Act had seemed reasonable when they passed it. Humanity had been expanding too quickly, claiming mining rights in the Orion sector, establishing colonies on dozens of worlds. They were only 500 years old as a spacefaring species. The older races had felt threatened. The act had stripped humanity of their colonial mining rights and redistributed them to the Krell Empire and the Velith Dominion. The justification was simple: preserve balance, prevent any single species from becoming too powerful. Many on the council had expected the humans to protest, to negotiate, perhaps to threaten. No one had expected this. In the days that followed, the scope of humanity's departure became clear. Human doctors working in council hospitals simply walked out, leaving behind patients who had depended on their unique healing abilities. Human engineers maintaining critical infrastructure handed their tools to confused assistants and boarded transport ships. Human teachers at multi-species academies gave their final lessons and disappeared. The humans took nothing that was not theirs. They left every piece of borrowed equipment, every rented facility, every shared resource. What they took was far more valuable: their knowledge, their creativity, their willingness to help. Ambassador Tethkar visited Earth's embassy 3 days after the council meeting. She found the building completely empty. Every computer wiped. Every document removed. The only thing left was a small paper note on the ambassador's desk, written by hand in the old human tradition. It came in peace. We offered friendship. We shared everything we had. You taught us that generosity is punished here. We will not make that mistake again. Tethkari held the note for a long time, reading those words over and over. She had always respected the humans. She had voted against the Resource Allocation Act. Though her single vote had not been enough to stop it, she wondered if the council truly understood what they had lost. Back on Earth, Daniel Hayes stood at a window in the Terran Assembly Building, watching the last transport ships rise into the night sky. His aide, a young woman named Rebecca Chen, stood beside him. "The council will send messages," Rebecca said. "They will demand explanations, threaten sanctions." "Let them," Daniel replied. "We have nothing more to say to them if they come after us." Daniel smiled, but there was no happiness in it. "They think we are children playing at civilization. They think our technology, our medicine, our agriculture were accidents. They never wondered why we shared so freely, why we never demanded payment for our innovations." He turned to face Rebecca. "They never realized we were holding back." Outside the window, humanity's fleet gathered in formation. Thousands of ships, more than the council believed they possessed, prepared to journey beyond the rim. They carried with them the seeds of a new civilization, one that would not repeat the mistakes of dealing with species who feared cooperation. The Galactic Council had made its choice. Now humanity would make theirs. 6 months passed since the humans left, and the galaxy began to fall apart. It started slowly, like cracks spreading through ice. Small problems that had always been managed suddenly had no solutions. Arguments that had always been resolved suddenly had no mediators. Systems that had always worked suddenly had no maintenance. The Velith Dominion and the Dromar Confederacy had hated each other for 800 years. Their territories shared a border spanning 3 star systems, and both species claimed ancient rights to those worlds. For the past 2 centuries, human diplomats had kept the peace. Ambassador Patricia Lane had spent 40 years traveling between their capitals, carrying messages, proposing compromises, building trust, one small agreement at a time. When the humans left, Patricia went with them. She did not send a replacement. She did not leave instructions. She simply vanished, along with every other human who had worked in that sector. The first shots were fired 11. Days later, Counselor Yethmar of the Velith sent urgent messages to Earth's former embassy coordinates. He begged for intervention. He promised to support reversing the Resource Allocation Act. He offered mining rights, trade agreements, anything the humans might want. His messages went unanswered. Within 3 weeks, the border conflict had become a full war. Velith warships bombarded Dromar colonies. Dromar raiders struck deep into Velith territory. Refugee ships flooded into neighboring systems. Overwhelming local resources, High Counselor Vetheri called an emergency session to address the crisis. The chamber was half empty. Many representatives had returned to their homeworlds to deal with their own emerging problems. "We must send peacekeeping forces," Vethry announced. "The Velithromar War threatens to destabilize the entire sector." "With what forces?" asked Representative Moreth. His voice had lost some of its earlier arrogance. "Our military coordination systems were designed by human strategists. Without them, our fleets cannot operate together effectively." This was true, and everyone knew it. Human tactical advisors had served with Council military forces for generations. They had created the communication protocols, the formation systems, the logistics networks that allowed 47 different species to fight as one. Those humans were gone now, and they had taken their expertise with them. The peacekeeping mission launched anyway. It was a disaster. Beleth ships misinterpreted signals from their Krell allies and opened fire on friendly vessels. Romar forces exploited the confusion to break through the peacekeeping line. The battle that was supposed to end the war instead spread it to 2 more systems. Meanwhile, other problems demanded attention. The Krell Empire had moved quickly to claim the mining operations humanity abandoned in the Orion sector. Marath himself had traveled to inspect their new holdings. What he found had shaken him deeply. The humans had left nothing useful behind. Every piece of equipment had been removed or destroyed. Every database had been wiped clean. The facilities that remained were empty shells, useless without the technology that had once filled them. "They built these stations in 50 years, Morph's chief engineer reported. "It would take us 3 centuries to recreate what they accomplished, even if we understood how they did it, which we do not. Worse still, the workers who had depended on human employment now had nothing. Thousands of aliens from dozens of species had worked in human-owned facilities, learning human methods, using human tools. These workers gathered in camps outside the empty stations, waiting for jobs that would never return. A Torvani engineer, named Sikith, was brought before the council to testify about conditions in the former human territories. He was a small creature, barely 3 feet tall, with 4 arms and large, sorrowful eyes. "The humans trained us," Sikith said. "They taught us skills our own people had never developed. They shared their technology freely, asking nothing in return except honest work. They treated us as equals, even though our species had no power, no influence, no value in council politics." He paused, looking around the chamber at the representatives who had voted to punish humanity. "And you drove them away, not because they did anything wrong, because they were too successful, because they made you feel small." Morith demanded that Sikith be removed from the chamber for disrespect. Vethry refused. She knew the engineer was speaking the truth. The agricultural crisis hit next. Worlds and council space depended on food produced using human farming techniques. These methods had ended famines that had lasted for generations. They had transformed barren planets into gardens. They had fed billions of beings who would otherwise have starved. The council's science division attempted to replicate these techniques. They studied the equipment the humans had left behind. They interviewed alien workers who had assisted in human agricultural operations. They consulted ancient databases and modern simulations. Every attempt failed. "Human agriculture is not simply technology," explained Dr. Kelleth, the council's chief agricultural scientist. "It is part science, part art, part intuition. Humans can look at a struggling crop and understand what it needs. They can taste soil and know what nutrients are missing. They have a connection. 2 growing things that we cannot quantify or reproduce." Food shortages began on the outer colonies, and they spread to more developed worlds. Prices rose. Protests erupted. Governments that had stood for centuries began to wobble. The medical crisis was even worse. Human doctors had served throughout council space, treating species whose biology was nothing like their own. They had synthesized cures from unlikely sources. They had seen connections between diseases that other species missed. They had saved lives that everyone else had given up on. Now those doctors were gone. Hospitals that had maintained perfect survival rates suddenly saw patients dying. Diseases that had been controlled began spreading again. Research programs that had been on the edge of breakthroughs collapsed without human insights. Captain Samuel Drake had been the last human merchant to leave council space before his departure. He had shared a meal with his Torvani business partner, a trader named Belith, who had grown wealthy from their partnership. "I am sorry," Belith had said. "I spoke against the act. I told everyone who would listen that it was madness. No one cared." Samuel had nodded, showing no anger, only sadness. "I know, old friend. That is why I am telling you this. Prepare yourself. What comes next will be hard." "What do you mean? You wanted us gone. You have your wish. Now you will learn what that means." Belith had not understood at the time. 6 months later, watching his trade network collapse, watching his Torvani homeworld struggle with food shortages and disease outbreaks, he understood completely. The humans had not been parasites feeding off the Council's resources. They had been the heart pumping blood through the galaxy's veins. And the Council, in its wisdom and arrogance, had cut that heart out. 18 months after the humans left, the Galactic Council voted unanimously to find them and ask them to return. It was not an easy vote. Many representatives had to swallow their pride. Others had to admit mistakes they had spent months denying. A few, like Morith of the Krell Empire, voted in favor only because their own people had begun demanding answers. Ambassador Tethkari was chosen to lead the mission. She was a sentinel, a species known for patience and diplomacy. Her silver skin and large dark eyes had a calming effect on most beings. More importantly, she had voted against the Resource Allocation Act. If anyone could approach the humans without triggering immediate hostility, it was her. Her ship was called the Concordance, a diplomatic vessel equipped with the best sensors and communication systems the Council could provide. Her crew included representatives from 12 species, all carefully selected for their lack of involvement in the act that had driven humanity away. They traveled toward the galactic rim following the path humanity's fleet had taken 18 months before. The journey took them through regions of space that the Council had never bothered to explore. There was nothing out here according to ancient surveys. Empty systems, dead stars, cosmic dust. For 3 weeks they found exactly that, nothing but darkness and silence. Tethkari began to wonder if the humans had simply died out there, victims of their own pride. Perhaps they had fled into the void without a plan, without resources, without hope. Perhaps the galaxy would never know what happened to them. Then they found the beacon. It was a simple device floating in the darkness between stars, no larger than a cargo container. It should have been invisible against the vast emptiness of space, but it broadcast a signal that the Concordance's sensors detected from half a light year away. The message was transmitted in every language the Council used, plus dozens more that Tethkari did not recognize. "You are now entering human space. State your intentions or turn back." Tethkari ordered her communications officer to respond immediately. "This is Ambassador Tethkari of the Galactic Council, aboard the diplomatic vessel Concordance. We come seeking dialogue with the Terran government. We wish to discuss the possibility of renewed relations between humanity and the Council." The reply came after a long pause. A human woman appeared on the view screen. She wore a uniform that Tethkari did not recognize, dark blue with silver markings. Her face was calm but hard, like stone that had been polished smooth. "I am Commander Lisa Morgan of the Terran Defense Force. The Galactic Council has no authority here. However, if you wish to speak with our government, you may proceed to the following coordinates. You will be met by an escort. Do not deviate from the assigned course. Do not activate weapon systems. Do not scan any object or vessel you encounter. We understand and agree to your terms," Tethkari replied. The coordinates led them deeper into the rim, toward a star system that Council surveys had marked as unremarkable. When they arrived, Tethkari understood why the surveys had been wrong. The surveys had been conducted 2,000 years ago. That time, this system had been empty. It was not empty now. Stations orbited every planet. Some were small research facilities. Others were massive construction platforms, larger than anything the Council had ever built. Ships moved between them in constant streams, hundreds of vessels of designs that Tethkar had never seen before. "That is not possible," whispered her science officer. A Krell named Vorith, who had spent his career studying spacecraft design. They had been gone for 18 months. This would take centuries to build. Unless they had already built it, Tethkari said quietly. Unless they built it long ago and simply never told us. The escort arrived, 3 warships that dwarfed the Concordance. They flanked the diplomatic vessel and guided it toward the largest station in the system, a wheel-shaped structure that slowly rotated against the stars. Tethkar was taken to a meeting room aboard the station. The walls were decorated with images of Earth, blue oceans, green forests, cities that glittered with lights. She had never visited the human homeworld. Looking at these pictures, she felt a strange sadness at what she had missed. The door opened, and a human man entered. He was older than Commander Morgan, with gray hair and lines around his eyes that spoke of many years and many worries. He introduced himself as Kevin Porter, Speaker of the Terran Assembly. "Ambassador Tethkari," he said, sitting across from her. "I know why you have come. The Council is struggling without us. Your wars are spreading. Your economies are failing. Your people are suffering. You want us to come back and fix everything." Tethkari nodded. "I will not insult you by denying it. The Council made a terrible mistake. We recognize that now. We wish to make amends." Kevin studied her for a long moment. His eyes were not angry, which Psalm Aho made things worse. They were simply tired. "You took our mining rights because you feared our growth," he said. "But you did not understand what you were looking at. We never needed your resources, Ambassador. We never needed your permission. We shared our gifts freely because we believed in cooperation. We believed that if we helped others, others would help us in return. You taught us that cooperation was a mistake." "I voted against the act," Tethkari said. "Many of us did. We tried to stop it." "No. I have read the records. 31 representatives voted against, 16 voted in favor. And those 16 carried the day because they represented the oldest and most powerful species. Your council is not a democracy, Ambassador. It is an oligarchy wearing democratic clothes." Tethkari had no response to this. "It was true. Humanity will not rejoin the Galactic Council," Kevin continued. "We will establish our own sphere of influence here, beyond the Rim. We will build our own civilization based on the principles your council rejected. Trade will be permitted, but on our terms. Diplomatic relations will be considered eventually, but not now. And the crisis in council space? The wars, the famines, the diseases?" Kevin's expression softened slightly, showing a hint of the compassion that had once defined humanity's relationship with the galaxy. "We will not let innocent beings suffer for the crimes of their leaders. If the Council requests humanitarian aid, we will consider each request on its own merits. But we will not return. Not now. Perhaps not ever." The meeting ended shortly after. Tethkari was escorted back to the Concordance and guided out of human space by the same warships that had brought her in, as she watched the beacon fade on her sensors. She dictated her report to the Council. It was a long report full of details about human infrastructure, human technology, human determination. But the most important part was simple. "They are not coming back," she said. "And they do not need us. Perhaps they never did." The delegation returned to Council space, carrying news that no one wanted to hear. Ambassador Tethkari delivered her report to a chamber that had grown emptier with each passing month. Representatives who had once attended every session now sent junior officials in their place. The great powers that had dominated the Council for millennia were too busy managing their own crises to care about galactic governance. "Hi." Councillor Vethary listened to the report in silence. When Tethkari finished, the old insectoid sat motionless for a long moment, her compound eyes reflecting the dim lights of the chamber. "They built all of that in 18 months, she said finally. "How is that possible?" "They did not build it in 18 months, Tethkari replied. "Speaker Porter made that clear. They have been preparing for this possibility for generations. The infrastructure we saw was constructed over centuries. It's hidden beyond our sensor range, waiting for the day when they might need it." "They lied to us," growled Morith of the Krell Empire. "They pretended to be our partners while secretly building a rival civilization." "They shared everything with us," Tethkari corrected him. "Their medicine, their agriculture, their technology. They gave freely and asked for nothing in return. What they did not share was the full extent of their capabilities. Can you blame them for that precaution, given what we did the moment we felt threatened? Morith had no answer. The council voted to accept humanity's terms. Trade delegations were sent to the Rim, carrying goods that human merchants were willing to purchase. The prices were fair but firm. There was no negotiation, no special treatment for species that had once held power over human affairs. Some in the council saw this as an insult. Others saw it as justice, but even fair trade could not solve. It's the cascade of disasters that continued to spread through council space. The Velith-Dromar War had drawn in 3 more species, each pursuing ancient grudges that human diplomats had kept buried for centuries. The fighting consumed resources that were already scarce. Driving more worlds toward famine and collapse, the Krell Empire faced rebellion from within. Species that the Krell had conquered generations ago now demanded the rights that human advocates had long championed. Without human voices speaking for the oppressed in council chambers, these species had no peaceful path to freedom. Many chose violent paths instead. 3 minor species declared independence from the council entirely. They sealed their borders and refused all communication, afraid that the chaos spreading through council space would reach their worlds next. And then the plague arrived. It began on Theseus Station, a trading hub near the former human border. The station served dozens of species, all of them mingling in crowded markets and shared living spaces. No one knew exactly where the disease came from. Some blamed a mutation in a common pathogen. Others suspected biological warfare. The truth hardly mattered. What mattered was how fast it spread. Within days, thousands were sick. Within weeks, the plague had reached a dozen worlds. Council medical teams scrambled to respond, but they were overwhelmed from the start. The containment protocols that had once prevented such outbreaks had been designed by human epidemiologists. Without them, the protocols were incomplete, full of gaps that the disease exploited. Dr. Kaleth, the council's chief agricultural scientist, had been reassigned to the medical crisis. He stood before the emergency session looking like he had not slept in days. Humans called this a spillover event, he explained. When multiple species interact in close quarters, diseases can jump between them, mutating in ways that make them more dangerous. Humans maintained strict protocols to prevent such events. Quarantine procedures, genetic screening, decontamination systems. We abandoned those protocols when they left. Why were we not maintaining our own protocols? Demanded a representative whose species had lost 3 colonies to the plague. Out. Because the human protocols worked, Keleth replied. We never needed our own. We trusted them to protect us, and they did. For 300 years, they did. And we repaid that protection by stealing their mining rights. The council transmitted a desperate plea for humanitarian aid. The message was sent to every human frequency they could identify, begging for medical assistance. For 3 days, there was no response. Some began to believe that humanity would simply let them die. Punishment for 3 centuries of arrogance. On the 4th day, a reply arrived from Dr. Nancy Kim, Director of Humanity's Medical Research Collective. We will help, Nancy said. Her face on the view screen was calm and professional, showing neither anger nor satisfaction. Not because your council deserves it, but because innocent people are suffering. Prepare to receive our medical ships at the following coordinates. The ships arrived within days. They were not warships or diplomatic vessels, but hospital ships. Massive structures designed to treat thousands of patients simultaneously. Human doctors in environmental suits deployed to infected stations and colonies. Working alongside local healthcare workers, who watched them with a mixture of gratitude and shame, the humans did not lecture. They did not demand apologies. They simply worked, day and night, treating the sick and developing containment protocols that actually functioned. Within 2 weeks, the plague spread had stopped. Within a month, the death toll had stabilized. Within 3 months, the crisis was over, and then the human ships departed. Returning to the Rim without ceremony or demand, Ambassador Tethkari managed to speak with Commander Lisa Morgan before the last ship left. The Sentinel diplomat looked exhausted, having spent the past months coordinating relief efforts and translating between human medical teams and local populations. "I must ask," Tethkari said. "After everything the Council did to your people, why did you come? Why did you save us?" Lisa considered the question for a long moment. "Because that is who we are," she said finally. "We help because we can. That has not changed. It will never change. But we will never again trust those who punished us for being helpful. Is there nothing we can do to earn that trust back?" "Trust is earned through actions, Ambassador. Through years of actions, through generations of actions. The Council spent centuries treating us as children to be managed. Then it spent centuries treating us as tools to be used. Then it punished us for being too useful." Lisa's eyes were hard, but not cruel. "If you want our trust, stop asking how to earn it. Start acting like beings worthy of it. Eventually we will notice." The ship's engines powered up, filling the docking bay with a low hum. "How will we know when that day comes?" Tethkari asked. "You will know," Lisa replied. "When we start talking to you again." The ship departed, leaving behind a station full of recovered patients and a diplomat who wondered if such a day would come in her lifetime. Throughout Council space, the plague crisis had changed something. Species that had blamed humanity for their troubles now blamed the Council. Governments that had supported the Resource Allocation Act now faced angry populations demanding accountability. The old powers that had ruled the Council for millennia found their authority questioned at every turn. The reckoning had begun. And it was only getting started. 5 years had passed since. Ambassador Daniel Hayes placed a data crystal on the Council platform and walked away without a word. In that time, the galaxy had changed beyond recognition. The Galactic Council still existed, but it was a shadow of its former self. The Great Chamber that had once hosted representatives from 47 species now saw fewer than 30 in attendance. The rest had left, either to join humanity's growing commonwealth or to form their own independent alliances. High Counselor Vethari had announced her retirement after 60 years of service. She was old now, her once gleaming shell dulled by age and worry. Before stepping down, she agreed to a final interview with a journalist from the Independent Information Network, a news service that had emerged to replace the Council's controlled media. The journalist was a young Torvani named Selith, a species that had once been considered too minor to deserve Council attention. She set up her recording equipment in Vethari's private office, a room filled with artifacts from a lifetime of diplomacy. "High Counselor," Selith began, "history will remember the Resource Allocation Act as the event that ended Council dominance. Do you have any regrets about how events unfolded?" Vethari was silent for a long moment, her compound eyes distant with memory. "Regrets," she repeated. Such a small word for such an enormous feeling. "I regret the act itself, of course, but my regrets go much deeper than that." She shifted in her seat, her old joints clicking softly. "We believed that humanity's youth made them lesser," she continued. "They had only been traveling among the stars for 5 centuries. We had been doing so for thousands of years, some of us for tens of thousands. We looked at their short history and saw inexperience. We looked at their compassion and saw weakness. We looked at their willingness to cooperate and saw naivety. Now I understand that we were looking at everything backward. Their short history meant they had not had time to become cynical and cruel like the rest of us. Their compassion was not weakness, but strength. The strength to care about beings who could never repay them. Their cooperation was not naivety, but wisdom. The wisdom to understand that everyone benefits when everyone helps." Selith made a note on her data pad. "The Council argued that humanity needed to be contained before they became too powerful. Do you believe that fear was justified?" Vethari made a sound that might have been a laugh in her species. "Look around you, young one. Look at what humanity has built beyond the rim. Look at the commonwealth they have created, the species they have welcomed, the civilization they have grown. They are more powerful now than they ever would have been if they had stayed with us. Our attempt to contain them achieved the opposite of its goal. Some council members argue that humanity is now a threat to galactic security. Those members are fools," Vethari said bluntly. "Humanity has never attacked anyone who did not attack them first. They have never conquered territory that did not ask to join them. They have never used their power to dominate or destroy. If they wanted to crush the Council, they could do so easily. The fact that they have not done so proves that they are still the same beings who came to us 3 centuries ago, offering friendship and cooperation. The interview continued for another hour. Bethry spoke about the mistakes she had witnessed, the warnings she had ignored, the chances for reconciliation that had been missed. When it was over, she sat alone in her office for a long time, looking at the stars through her window. Somewhere out there, humanity was building a future she would never see on Earth. That future was already taking shape. The Terran Assembly had grown from a temporary government into the foundation of an interstellar commonwealth. 32 species had joined, some refugees from Council tyranny, others explorers who had encountered humanity in the unexplored regions beyond the rim. All of them had been welcomed, given homes, given opportunities. Given the same treatment that humanity had once offered the Council, Ambassador Daniel Hayes, now retired from active diplomacy, lived in a small house overlooking the city where he had grown up. His daughter Rebecca had followed in his footsteps, serving as humanity's representative to new species. Encountered in the expanding frontier, she visited him on the anniversary of the silent departure, bringing a bottle of wine and stories from her latest mission. "We made contact with a species called the Velthari," she told him as they sat on his porch, watching the sun set over the distant mountains. They had never met spacefaring beings before. They were terrified when our ships appeared. They expected us to conquer them. "What did you tell them?" "I told them what you told me, that we do not conquer. We do not demand. We offer friendship and wait to see if it is accepted." Daniel nodded slowly. "And was it?" "They invited us to their capital last week. Their leader wept when I explained that we would share our medical technology freely, without conditions. He said no one had ever offered them anything without wanting something in return." "That is the galaxy the Council built," Daniel said. "A galaxy where kindness is so rare that people cry when they encounter it. Will it always be that way?" Daniel considered the question, watching the last light fade from the sky. The Council taught the galaxy that power is what matters, that the strong take from the weak, that generosity is foolishness. It will take generations to undo that teaching. But every species we help, every friendship we build, every act of kindness we perform plants a seed. Eventually, those seeds will grow. Rebecca smiled. "You sound like a philosopher." "I sound like someone who walked out of a council chamber without a word and hoped the universe would learn the right lesson. Do you think it has?" Daniel did not answer immediately. Instead, he reached into his pocket and pulled out a small data pad, showing her a message that had arrived that morning. It was from Ambassador Tethkari, requesting a private meeting to discuss the possibility of improved relations between humanity and what remained of the Council. "It is a beginning," he said. "A small one. But beginnings are how change starts." Far beyond the rim, in the space humanity had claimed as their own, the work continued. New worlds were settled by species who had never known freedom before. New technologies were developed and shared freely with any who wished to learn. New children were born into a civilization that valued cooperation over competition, kindness over cruelty, hope over fear. In every human school, children learned the story of the silent departure. They learned about the Council's betrayal, the exodus to the rim, the long years of building something new. But the lesson was not about revenge or triumph. The lesson was about what happens when good faith is betrayed, and why it must never be betrayed again. The humans had left without a word because words had failed. They had spoken for 3 centuries, offering friendship, sharing gifts, asking only to be treated as equals. The Council had not listened. Now the Council was learning to listen, one painful lesson at a time, and humanity, patient as always, was waiting to see if they would finally hear some stories end with victory and celebration. This one ended with something quieter. A message requesting a meeting, an old diplomat watching the stars. A young ambassador planting seeds of friendship among species who had never known it before. The Council had erred. The Council had failed. But the universe was vast, and time was long. Somewhere in the darkness between stars, the seeds of something better were beginning to grow. The humans had not abandoned hope. They had simply learned to build it themselves.